Hello, good evening, and welcome to this special edition of Face the Nation surrounding the 2019 presidential elections. Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and war. It has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried over the millennia. This quote is attributed to Winston Churchill. Not sure if he actually said it, but it does tend to ring true to some people. Let me introduce our panel this evening. We have on my left Mr. Azad Sali, leader of the National Unity Alliance. Thank you very much, Mr. Sali, for joining us this evening. We also have Professor Rajiva Vijayasinghe, independent presidential candidate, former State Minister of Higher Education, a former MP, and also a former leader of the Liberal Party. Good to see you back in the political fray, Professor Vijayasinghe. And we also are joined this evening by Mr. Krishmal Varnasurya. Welcome to you, sir. Attorney at Law, Counsel for General Mahesh Senanayake, the candidate for the National People's Party. Also, formerly, well, I wouldn't say formally active, given that Mr. Varnasurya is still very active as an activist trying to bring about reform to our country. I'd like to start this evening with our presidential candidate, Professor Rajiva Vijayasinghe. Professor Vijayasinghe, you have contested a presidential election previously, which is from, if my understanding is correct, on the ticket of the Liberal Party, under the symbol of the book. You are now contesting as an independent candidate, I believe. This morning, the leader of the Communist Party, Mr. D. Gunasekara, was making some comments about the number of candidates. We have 35 candidates running, the highest ever number in the history of presidential elections in this country. How many of them are serious candidates? How many of them are coming from so-called three-wheeler parties, which have no more than 3 members? And how many of them are, in fact, serious candidates running on serious platforms? I want to ask you this. Are you a serious candidate running on a serious platform?
Well, I would certainly hope so. Obviously, I'm not running from a party. I'm running really for 2 reasons. One is because I feel a sense of responsibility for what I call the betrayal of 2015, when, I supported President Sirisena on an agenda of reform. He had a very good manifesto, some of which I contributed, and then after the election he forgot it completely. There was absolutely nothing done from the manifesto, and perhaps there were 2 cardinal points. One was electoral reform, which was forgotten completely. The second was to reduce the autocratic power of the presidency, which I thought was a good thing. I think that's still a good thing. But what happened instead was that there was a conspiracy to turn the autocratic power of the president into the autocratic power of the prime minister, which was completely wrong, because as you were saying a bit earlier, you can't ask people to vote for A and then produce B as the man in charge. And also Mahinda Rajapaksa was waiting to run against Ranil Wickremesinghe. But then, what was the compromise? It turned out to give autocratic power to this diarchy. And a very simple principle: how do you control the executive? Normally you do that through parliament. But in Sri Lanka, the parliament is run by the executive. And what did our beauties do? The committees that are supposed to control this consist of the executive. So, for instance, when they're nominating people, it wasn't getting parliamentarians who are not part of the executive to actually pick or suggest people. It almost turned into, you can have this and I can have this. So you have Pooja Jasundar, Ranil's man, and Hemasiri Fernando, Maitripala's man. Then, of course, Karu Jayasuriya got into the act, and he, of course, was running behind Ranil, now having told me when he was made Minister of Democratic Governance and I tried to get him to do things. No, I can't do anything because he doesn't trust me, you know that. And then what did he do to make it even worse? The other alternative became Mr. Sambandhan, who was another of these people with their tongues hanging out running behind Ranil. So you had this extraordinary thing of the checks on the executive being the executive. In fact, you remember that first Constitutional Council, more than half the people on it were ministers. So I thought it was necessary to produce a new constitution based on the promises that actually restores power to the people.
We'll go into this in some detail during the question round, but are you promising a new constitution? Is that part of your platform?
No, what I'm trying to do is raise awareness amongst the people and amongst my fellow candidates, two of whom will make it to the final round. I suspect there will be a final round this time, one of whom will win. But none of them seem to have been thinking deeply about the structural changes necessary. It's all very well to say, you know, we want to do various things. I hope they do what they promise as opposed to the pretty pair of 2015. But you also need structural change because this shouldn't be about individuals. So I want them to look at these ideas, discuss them, and then say, but these are good, maybe we can't do this.
Thank you very much.
So I'll give you some of those ideas later. It is an effort to make the people also realize, and one of the reasons I trust people will vote for me, I'm not expecting to win, is to send a message to these other people, try and listen to the fact that the people want change. I think that is very clear.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijay Singh. I wish you all success in trying to get the message out. Next, we move on to Mr. Azad Sali, leader of the National Unity Alliance. Mr. Sali, previously you have spoken of the need for alternatives to change the political culture of this country. Which candidate will the National Unity Alliance be supporting, or whom have you pledged your support to at this election, and why?
Actually speaking, we have still not taken a decision on whom to support, but we are very clear that we will not be supporting Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. That decision we have very clearly taken, because we can't have people who have bad experience. The country has suffered, we have suffered, individually I have suffered. So I think we have to keep that in mind, and we have to see which is good for the country. That's the most important thing the people will have to decide, because most importantly, in a party, you have democracy, and that democracy takes time for you to select a candidate. But here is a family that sits in a round table and decides which brother or which uncle will contest an election. It is not given to the masses. It is not given to the voter. It is not given to the party membership. No, it is not given to the political parties that come in alliance with them. Now see, when the question of Gotabaya Rajapaksa's candidature was in question, they immediately think of Chamal Rajapaksa, not Dinesh Gunawardena or not Vasudeva Nanayakar. This is, even today, you see Chamal Rajapaksa coming, paying deposit, but not giving his nominations. Why? Still they have doubt whether this will go through, whether Gotabaya Rajapaksa can be the candidate is a big question. Because more and more cases are going to come up, more and more activities. The trial ad bar is there, the case is already filed, he is going for 3 days from the 9th to the 12th. So you have a candidate. See, if you take the Rajapaksa family as a whole, the elder brother is 75, Mahinda Rajapaksa is 73, Gotabaya Rajapaksa is 70, and Basil Rajapaksa is 68. You have 4 people in that family, only they will contest. There will be no room for anybody else, no room for anybody to just suggest a name even, that sort of a thing. But here, the other side, we have after 25 years, they have got independence, right? They have got Mr. Sajith Premadasu to come after 25 years. This is, you know, what I feel and what I see, people calling me from various parts of the country saying, sir, we are coming back to the UNP. That is something new. Right now, you already have seen.
On that note, Mr. Sali, you said that the National Unity Alliance and yourself, you haven't decided whom to support as yet. But you were at the Presidential Secretariat, and I noticed that a lot of the objections that you're raising regarding the Rajapaksa family about candidates being selected at the dinner table and no other alternatives except for one of the brothers, they seem to be very much in sync with the objections that are raised by the United National Party. Are you also one of those people that has decided to go back into the fold of the United National Party?
No, I have my own political party. No, there is no question of my going into the UNP. UNP is a party that has let me down, right? So there is no question of my going into the UNP. Let's wait and see how things are going to come, how things are going to happen. Because as alliance partners, we were there. 2005, National Unity Alliance was the alliance partner of that.
So you were at the election secretariat today as an alliance partner of the UNP?
No, we had
You put forward your own
we have put forward a candidate.
And who is your candidate?
Namal Rajapaksa. He
Is
is
he
another Rajapaksa, but not from the family.
I'll ask the same, very quickly because I want to move, to Mr. Varnasuriya. Is he a serious candidate running on a serious platform?
Of course, very serious. He has been the third person on the list.
Mr. Krishmal Varnasuriya, a long-standing campaigner for an alternative voice in Sri Lankan politics, and now counsel for General Mahes Senanayake, who is putting himself forward as the alternative to mainstream politics in Sri Lanka. Not so much third force, but an alternative to the third force thus far as well. We were talking about these minor parties and candidates and the seriousness of the candidacy of certain candidates. I'd like to ask you, General Mahes Senanayake has expressed it himself that this is a serious candidacy and it's, there is a plan. What is the plan? What message are you trying to give to the people? Is this a viable alternative, that the candidacy of General Mahes Senanayake?
Firstly, thanks, Nadeem, to you, Deshan and Shahan and your station for having us in your August Assembly. It's been, I've just calculated, looking at my diary just before I came, it's been almost a year since I was here last. So thank you for inviting us again. Yes, it's been a year. So thanks for calling us again. But on the question of how serious, I don't think, looking at the candidates around, you can get any more serious than former Army Commander, General Senanayake. The few times I've sat with him and discussed things with him, personally, I appeared to see eye to eye with him on a lot of things. But Nadeem, as you started off, the reason that Mahes Senanayake is, in my opinion, the alternative that I and several others like-minded have been searching for is manifest in the fact that since around 2008, if I go later, after I returned to Sri Lanka after a break, from about 2008, we have been trying to make this change in our country. 2010, we thought we made a change, but almost there, didn't get through. 2015, we really thought we made a change, fighting on the roads, facing barrels, but still we were let down. And I think people like myself and several others have come to the conclusion that traditional politics has been the bane of our 71-year-old post-independence era. We have formed governments, but not a state. We have brought political parties and placed them in government office, but we have not established a state, a republic, institutions. We have failed to give the people that true value of their sovereign power. And this, therefore, is certainly the presidential election is by no means an end to what we have started with General Senanayake. I hope this will be a catalyst, a movement that people have started. Every day, Nadeem, I'm glad to say, the calls we get, the messages, social media, people are rallying around and getting behind, because people like me who are not subservient to a political power. That's the question. If you are subservient and if you depend on your very survival on knowing some politician, then you won't back us. But there are lots of people like us in this country who don't want to pay lip service to some political master to get things done. People like us who have strived hard, parents working hard, who educated us with difficulty, went to local universities with difficulty, went abroad and gained postgraduate qualifications, who don't want to pay lip service to some political masters to get things done. We want things done professionally. We want policy implemented. We want a system in this country. We want institutions strengthened. And for that, we have started a movement. All these years, we were fighting for an alternative. And as I put out recently, as I sat first with General Senanayake on my Facebook page, we've started the alternative. It's up to you whether it wins or loses. I really encourage you to start a movement now and say no to traditional mudslinging politics that are only self-centered and only care for what they can get and not what the people can get.
Mr. Varnasuriya, you mentioned the need to strengthen our institutions. You said that we put political parties into government, but we haven't really built a state or built a republic.
Yeah.
And that's why there is a need for an alternative, and that traditional politics has been the bane. I used this quote last week on the show, where the famous South American revolutionary Simon Bolivar says that it is precisely because democracy is the weakest form of government that it needs, that its institutions need to be strong. Well, that's the gist of it, not the exact phrasing. You have on your right a long-time campaigner for democratic reforms, specifically on issues like parliamentary reforms and on constitutional changes that need to be made to control the executive, establish checks and balances. And there are members of traditional political parties as well who've been trying to do this as a far. Why has that failed, and why will it succeed under your alternative?
Okay.
Or why has it had limited success, and why will it succeed?
Firstly, Nadeem, I, with all due respect to your revolutionary who quoted that, I have much higher regard for democracy. It is only that in Sri Lanka we have not had republicanism. In 1972 we said we built ourselves a republic. But we as people have thought every once in 5 years we can go put a cross and then sit at home and think the republic will be made automatically. That doesn't happen. We need to work on it. And we can discuss it going forward. But coming back to your party political system as to why it has failed, the best example is recent election, this run up to the presidential election. How long did it take for one particular party to pick their candidate? There was tussle between the leadership and the deputy leadership. And they talk of intra-party democracy. What nonsense. If you only pay lip service to the master, the political leadership, then you get nominations. Have we even discussed anything like intra-party democracy or primaries like in America, where you got to fight amongst good people in your own party to become a candidate? We have. Then on the other side, what do people have on the other side? As Azad said, we have a family, and that family decides who's running. If it's not one person from the family, another person from the family. And that is my question. Now, my question to the people is this. You have formed governments for 71 years, mainly based on these two political parties, with the Red brothers joining in here and there, and then going off. Now, can you, with any assurance, tell us, the people, that next cabinet that comes, whoever side, the faces in the team will be different? Although the main face may have changed and a new broom may have come, is it not the same kitchen cabinet? And then are you going to tell me that because the main face has changed, one man can change the country? I ask the people, post the question, who is your team? Who will come on the cabinet with you now? It's limited to 30 now. Who will man your education? Who's the maestro who's going to bring out GDP growth and bridge the budget deficit? Ask these questions and then decide. We have an alternative.
Thank you, Mr. Varnasuriya. Before I go in for questions, because I mentioned Professor Vijay Singh and the fact that in spite of a long-standing campaign inside Parliament and out, success has been limited, I made the observation. Am I correct in saying that success has been limited?
Absolutely.
For your part?
Absolutely. But I think one of the things you have to remember is all such changes only come through good leadership. And unfortunately, we have not had people who were concerned about making the changes that were necessary. I mean, one of the reasons I hope the serious candidates do well and get first preferences is that I think it's very important that whoever wins doesn't win on the first round. I do believe very strongly that the two best presidents we have had were those who won very narrowly. Mr. Premadasa in 1988 and Mr. Rajapaksa in 2005, because they kept on their toes. Anyone who was won with a large majority promptly went to sleep. Mrs. Kumaratunga in 1994 had a great opportunity. She just fell asleep. Mr. Rajapaksa in 2010, he got a massive majority and he forgot all the pledges. You know, I'm very proud. I was the only one who wrote to him in 2014 saying, do what you promised, otherwise I can't support you. Not that my support meant anything. Now, one of the reasons I think we must explain this electoral system thoroughly is that many people say, you know, we want A or B and we must give them a first preference, we'll give you a second. My point is they must know that a first preference to either of the major candidates means the second preference is irrelevant. But a first preference to any of the minor candidates can be transferred to their favorite candidate, because the rest will be eliminated, but will send a message that it's not that we're giving you carte blanche. We would like A or B to win, but we want you to get some ideas from the others. And I think it's very important that the minor candidates put forward ideas and a coherent system. I mean, one of the reasons I feel that at least intelligent people will listen to me is I have a full constitution ready with all the changes needed that is people-friendly. I'll give you one simple example. I went through the present parliamentary committee on the judiciary. All they're concerned about is the independence of the judges. You know, his favorite NGO line. I'm not saying that's not important.
Not
but
so much about the accountability.
Sorry?
Not so much about the accountability.
And the thing is, what do people want from the judiciary? They want quick justice. They want not inexpensive justice. They don't want people, especially young people, to be remanded and sent to jail and turned into criminals. They want people who are committed to care to be looked after. So those are the things we must entrench in the Constitution.
Thank you very much.
Not lip service to theories.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Both Professor Vijay Singh and Mr. Varnasuriya mentioned lip service. We're coming to the questions right away. I realize we're intruding on your time. Mr. Sali, you heard what Professor Vijay Singh had to say about first preferences and second preferences. Would you encourage the people to vote your candidate from the National Unity Alliance as a first preference?
See, we are not here to force anybody. We have.
But you have a candidate. Will you ask the people to vote for your candidate as a first preference?
What we are saying is, we have seen, like Krishma said, traditionally we have seen two parties coming and going. But we need to see, as Professor said also, what is happening to the country, what is happening to the pledges that have been given to the country. As he said, keeping the candidate on his toe was the right thing. We saw Mr. Premadasa performing so well. Why? He wanted to complete his first term and go for the second, right? After that, as he said, Chandrika came with a massive majority. Maithripala Sirisena also came with a big majority. I think Maithripala Sirisena would have been the best person if he had just focused on what he should have been doing, because the whole country was behind him, because that was a time that people were wanting the change, and it was a great change. Nobody expected. See, President Rajapaksa contested being the president, number one, having the cabinet, having parliament on his side, having all the provincial councillors, having the local authority, everything, the army, navy, air force, everything full-fledged with him. With all that, we stood our grounds and we defeated him. That was a big, massive victory for Maithripala Sirisena. He should never ever forget that. See, within the shortest period, he forgot. He should have been, not only that, he should have gone for the Nobel Peace Prize. He should have gone for the second term. All these were our dreams. We wanted that change to come. But very unfortunate, people like S.P. Dissanayake ruined him completely. Dilan Pereira came and ruined every day, come, tomorrow, yes. That is why that Mahinda Rajapaksa's government came in. That was the biggest disaster that came to Maithripala Sirisena.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sali. Well, we have both Mr. Sali and Professor Vijay Singh and also Mr. Varnasuriya, although he's here after almost a year. I didn't realize that. Welcome back to Face the Nation, Mr.
Nice to be back.
I think it's been mentioned to you on repeated previous occasions on the show that you have to take responsibility for any names that you mentioned. So more for the benefit for our viewers than for the benefit of our guests this evening. We will not be taking responsibility for any statements that you make. And on that note, let's go on to our questions. Deshan and Shehan, thank you very much for being on the show this evening. Over to you.
Thank you, Shehan. Thank you, Nadeem, brother. Shehan, if I may.
Yes, sure.
I want to pose my first question to Mr. Varnasuriya, but before I get to Mr. Varnasuriya, Professor Vijay Singh, this constitution is not like Mr. Nagananda Kodituakku's constitution, correct? You're not going to implement it once you become president. I'm hoping you're putting it to parliament first.
No, the simple point is, A, to be absolutely honest, I don't expect to become president. I believe in providing ideas to people.
Right.
And I expect them, if they are really seriously concerned about reform, to look at the ideas, think about them, and pick what they think is most suitable. There are 5 or 6 different chapters where I've made grave changes. In some, they're very small. As I said about the judiciary,
Right.
it's something I tried with Shirani Bandaranaike 6 years ago.
Yeah.
The Chief Justice has the power to make rules. And our Human Rights Action Plan wanted rules. And of course, I got a dusty reply from her.
Yeah.
No, this is not my business. So you see, in fact, ironically, being one of the few people who refused to vote for her impeachment, I was perhaps the first person to point out that she wasn't a very good Chief Justice. Similarly, you actually have very simple measures that can be taken, including strengthening Parliament oversight committees. One very simple thing I've put in, and I hope every presidential candidate says they will do this, is introduce into the Constitution the 4th power of the people. There's an executive power, there's a legislative power, there's a judicial power, and there is an oversight power. Because you must monitor what the executive does. And at the moment, the oversight committees of Parliament have no teeth. We tried when I was in Parliament to actually change the standing orders. I actually got consensus on this towards the end of 2015. I was the only one trying to do this. And then Maithripala Sirisena dissolved Parliament. You know, I'm sorry, Mr. Sali, you may be very kind about him, but I think our main problem was we picked as the candidate a good man with no brains and no staying power at all. Kapatikama is not brains. So I think we have this rather sad situation where this well-intentioned man, I believe, who I believe is more honest than the rest of his cabinet, or many people in it, just couldn't do anything. And not only could he not do anything, he wasn't prepared to get people to advise him who understood. So that was really the problem, and that is why you have to divide up power, not do what Sirisena and Wickramasinghe did, which is you have this and I'll have this and we'll give Kadu a little bit here and Sambandhan can have some more. You must give power to people who are not part of the executive to control things.
Professor Vijayasinghe, again, before I go to Mr. Varnasuriya, so you're not going to take your mandate, potential mandate, as one to overhaul Parliament and the judiciary, whatnot?
If I'm elected, and I will say this, I think many of you remember in 2015, when we started work, Malinda Senratna said, and he confirmed this here, he had told people I was the only minister who was working. I got a new act done. I produced 2 cabinet papers. I don't think Kabir Hashim even bothered about the cabinet papers after I was got rid of. Because no one was willing to work, they were thinking about the next election. So if I'm elected, though I doubt that will happen, I would certainly implement what I have to do which requires this. By the way, I don't know whether you've read my articles in Ceylon today, which was the genesis of the Constitution. The new president has a fantastic opportunity from November the 16th to get anything done. Because provided he plays by the rules, the parliamentarians will vote for anything he asks them to vote for because they're dying for their pensions. He can dissolve Parliament on the 15th of February or so.
Yeah.
If he tells them, look chaps, just vote for these changes, I'll keep you going till August 15th, you can have your pensions. Their tongues hanging out, they'll vote for anything he asks them to do. So I think he has a great opportunity between November now and August next year to get all the changes through. And I do hope that whoever is elected president works in those first 3 months without wondering about how to win the general election.
Thank you, Professor. I want to go to Mr. Varnasuriya. Mr. Varnasuriya, you mentioned about the fact that when you had these discussions with Mr. General Senanayake, rather, that you resonate with a lot of the things he says. Being closely associated with him, realistically, do you see Mahesh Senanayake coming out as the president come the 17th of November?
One thing, Deshan, is I can't say that I'm closely associated with him because I only started knowing him after myself, several other groups, including the Mahajana Sabha, NPM, they all nominated him as a common candidate for an alternative force. So I can't say that I know him that well. But what I tried to say was, the few conversations I've had with him, you know, sometimes we have this knack for reading people. Sometimes we may be wrong. But sometimes there's a gut feeling that with this chap you can work.
2015, did you have that gut feeling? Or?
2015, I never met the presidential candidate. 2015, I was on a stage shouting to make a change. In November, Azad and I both didn't know who our common candidates were. But we were shouting for a change.
Yeah.
But this time it's different. I've gone this time with my eyes wide open. But coming back to your point, you see, I don't, as I've tried to say, Deshan, I don't see Mahesh's election as president necessarily as the end of a battle that we've started. I hope, and we will very well work our guts out to make sure that Mahesh wins. But even he himself, if you heard him at the Sukatadasa when we presented him to the people, said, this is not a journey for me to become king or president. I am giving a voice to the people who have been searching for an alternative, a true alternative. That's why I'm glad that Nadeem changed his third force to alternative force. I don't believe the third force. We are not third by any means. We are the first. But the people need to rally around this first force. But he said, I want to start making a change. So it may very well go beyond. Say, for instance, if we are not victorious at a presidential election, it may still go to a next general election.
Right.
It may go to local authority election,
Right.
provincial elections. But a force, nevertheless, a force that is, in a sense, apolitical, but I know it's a political game. We have to have a political party to present candidates under. But a force that is not this mud politics that we have seen up to now.
Mr. Varnasuriya, the next question begs, how long have you been part of these? Very short, if you can answer in a very short manner. How long have you been part of this NPM-led alternative
I haven't been,
force?
I am not a member of the NPM, Deshan.
Right.
The NPM have organized themselves. I can't speak for them. I think it's best that you ask one of them. But certainly, NPM, the Mahajana Sabha, whom I'm more closely affiliated to,
Right.
and several other groups and organizations, and even people like us now, in a very little way, we have also started, Azad and I were at one time part of the Rata Suryaku movement. We had the People's Intellectual Assembly. We have built little groups, and at the moment we have some groups across the globe. I manage them in Europe and UK, in the States and Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan and Middle East. So these people, and we have been working together to try and develop this alternate force.
Right.
And it's a culmination of all these people coming together, and Mahesh is actually the manifestation of all our common thinking.
Was Mahesh Senanayake the first choice?
I wouldn't know that. But when Mahesh Senanayake was offered to us as a candidate, we put both hands up.
Right. Mr. Sali, good to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
See, you speak about how much the political culture of this country has fallen apart, about how successive governments have failed, about how successive leaders of state have failed in doing what they were supposed to do. Yet, you spoke favorably in terms of the UNP's presidential candidate. Why are you not supporting Mahesh Senanayake? You have been very vocal, very critical of both the major factions.
See, our common enemy is the Rajapaksas. So, supporting Mahesh is not going to make the change. People of this country have to understand we have to anyhow put a stop to the Rajapaksas coming. If you don't stop that, it's a disaster to the country, right? All the white man traditions will come, kidnapping people, killing people, media freedom, everything will be lost. People who are supporting, or the TV stations that are supporting, will be the first to be attacked. That I will give it now, you can keep it on record and put it when that takes place, right? You know how when they went to the media, even recently when they went to their own media station, the private media station which are supporting them, and when all the balls were put for him to hit sixes. But suddenly when one question was put to him, he said, wow. You saw that on television, you saw that on WhatsApp, how he blasted that lady who interviewed her. What happened? So, before you come to power, you are showing your colors, right? And see the people who are right around you. Ethanol dealers, drug peddlers, murderers, kidnappers, all this crowd is there. Why we are talking of a new personality is nobody up to today can point a finger at Sajid Premadasa.
Mr. Sali, that's a very interesting remark. Why I want to ask you this?
Let me finish.
I want to ask you, that's a very interesting remark that you made.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, I'm sure Mr. Varnasuriya will agree with me, Mr. Professor Vijay Singha will, the same argument or the same allegation can be made to the side of the incumbent government. We have people involved in the bond scam, people involved in the textbook scam, the tab scam, so many other things. Why is Mahesh Senanayake not the solution then?
See, you must think to defeat the Rajapaksas, you need a personality and a party that can cater to that. Right? Now, Mahesh is just coming. Might be Mahesh will take some time, but this, as he says, is a good start. People will go, then we can see how much. See, now, this, as everybody mentioned earlier, for the first time in Sri Lanka's history, we are having 35 candidates out of 41. 31 have nominations accepted.
Some ran off.
Yeah. See, people who, those were alternatives that they put, they ran off. So, some people who paid the deposit never came even to say that they are not contesting. So, that was there. What I am trying to say is, how to stop the Rajapaksas coming is my point. So, Mahesh, yes, we all say that Mahesh is a good person. Now, see, who is shouting about Mahesh? Is the UNP talking anything about Mahesh? It is Vimal Veeravanshu who is speaking about Mahesh. He is saying, "Oh, American car hai." He has forgotten that he is sitting behind American car hai. He has forgotten that American car is still liable to America for the next 10 years.
Mr. Sali, just listening to what you've been saying over the past few minutes, it seems that your entire focus at this presidential election is entirely to do with defeating the Rajapaksas. It's like no matter what,
Yeah,
no matter
man,
who,
you know why?
we just have to make sure that
Yeah,
the
man,
Rajapaksas
you know why?
don't win.
Your station has to be preserved. You must be preserved. This is what I am talking of. Siyata was attacked, right? You were attacked. Udayan was attacked. Agnigoda was not there. Our good friend Lasanta was killed on the way. These things should never happen in this country.
Mr. Sali, I think I can speak for the journalistic community as a whole that when it comes to attacks on journalists, while it's good to have allegations of who did it and where and when and how, what the motivations were.
That is right.
At the end of the day, I think all of us and all democracy
why all three of us
freedom-loving Sri Lankans
why all of us
we'd much rather see convictions.
Why all three of...
May I only come in there for 30 seconds?
Yeah.
I agree with Nadeem. Azad, remember these were some of the slogans as we said on stages, no, Azad, in 2015. We said that we were going to bring the culprits to book, no?
I'm going to say that, yes.
So now, Azad, we had to also accept the reality to these people who are watching us. They heard us 5 years ago and they made a change. And we must admit that we failed.
Not only that.
We failed. We used them as political slogans, but we have failed politically, and that is why you need to consider an alternate.
Krishmal, that's why I was going to come for that only. 4.5 years it took for them to check whether this guy has a dual citizenship or not. Right? It took 4 years for them to go and file a case. Now trial at bar is going at a rate. Trial at bar, every day you have a trial at bar somewhere, you write a letter to CJ asking trial at bar. And then bail him out, and then the case goes.
And then they try to fix the legal system by calling Solicitor General.
Exactly. So, I mean, who should be blamed? The President and the Prime Minister and the government must be blamed. All three of us are there. Because all three of us work for that.
But excuse me, I worked for this government. The minute I realized it was more corrupt than the Rajapaksas, and I say that very strongly, I left. And that is, I think, the difference. Krishman, of course, wasn't in the government, so I can't blame him. But I think the people who hung on to this absolutely corrupt government must also take some responsibility for what has happened. And I don't want to be put in the same boat. I'm not saying I made a mistake in 2014. I'm still not sure. But I think I felt that if Mahinda Rajapaksa, together with the people surrounding him, then like Sajid Vasconowardhan and all continued, things would have been bad. And that is why I don't think I regret what I did. But the minute I realized that nothing was happening from the manifesto, and even worse after the bond scam, I left that government, and I'm immensely proud to have done that.
Professor,
and I can say that I was the only one who did that.
Professor Vijay Singh, further to what you just said, now based on all that you have said, it seems that you are not seriously, you don't believe that you can win the presidential election, but having said that, you are contesting. So could you give us a blueprint of what it is, or an ideal scenario of the next few days in the lead up to the election, and once you have the election and after the election, if everything goes as you plan, what will that look like?
Well, let me put it very simply. frankly, I don't think anyone except two people believe that they can win this election. In fact, I was really fascinated by Sada saying, well, actually, I'm supporting Namal Rajapaksa. Really, I want Sajid to win. It was a fantastic performance of double speak. And I'm not blaming you because.
But this Namal Rajapaksa is some other.
No, that's what I mean. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So he's a UNP lawyer. Everybody knows he's a UNP lawyer. Everybody knows that your party is Srinath Pereira.
No, Srinath Pereira's party is fielding my phone.
Exactly.
I'm not part of Srinath's party.
No, not you, but the party that you're supporting.
No, I'm not supporting any party.
You're a candidate from a particular party,
no.
Krishmal.
No, I'm sorry, Dr. Jayasinghe. Don't put words in my mouth. Srinath Pereira belongs to a party called the National People's Party. And at this moment of time, the alliance of persons who are backing Mahesh have decided that Srinath Pereira's, this party that you speak, actually it's not Srinath's party. The National People's Party will be the party used, the vehicle used for the election.
And Srinath Pereira is a well-known UNP character. Anyway, but Krishmal, I believe in your integrity. But I'm a bit worried about the company you keep. That's a separate issue. But no, my point is this. I have this constitution ready, I'm releasing it. I'm hoping that people looking for constitution and comprehensive ideas, I think you asked me, why don't we share ideas? I said, my ideas are always welcome to anyone who wants them. I hope both your candidates, neither of whom has expressed any of these ideas, would look at these and gradually momentum would rise and people would say, yes, these things must be done.
Yes,
let us adopt these ideas. These are not political, contentious ideas. They have to do with education. Everyone agrees we need education. Sajid spoke recently about preschools. We need better preschools. Where are the ideas? Now, I think I can say that from my track record, I'm probably recognized as the most honest of the candidates standing, the most intelligent. There are other people more efficient than me. I mean, I think I'm pretty efficient, but I certainly say I know that there are others. So why don't people adopt some of these ideas, some of these methods? And I believe some of them will, because they're self-evidently necessary. So I hope that over the next few weeks, people will start discussing these ideas, putting them out through social media. The media will take them up.
Professor, you did not give this, when the constitution was going to be amended and they were talking about the 19th Amendment, 20th Amendment, all that, didn't you give your ideas there then?
Dear Mr. Sali, I did. People asked me why I voted for the 19th Amendment. I said because it was better than what we'd had before. But if you look at the Hansard, I have 20 amendments to this, all of which I proposed. Everyone shouted at me on both sides. Shut up, we are sleeping. We don't understand this. You know the way parliamentarians behave. And one of the reasons, and I put it in the Constitution, in any other democracy, Parliament isn't asked to vote on something until a committee of Parliament has gone through it. The committee system in India, in Britain, in America, you have a few people who studied on a bipartisan basis. I suggested that in my advancement to standing orders, they're all there. So could I tell you to please tell your candidate, I assume it's Sajid, to study my amendments? He may not like all of them, but they're there. And I made those points. Right through, I got standing orders amended until Sirisena Amendment dissolved Parliament, having promised everybody he wasn't going to do it. On electoral reform, the amendment I put, the Parliament refused it on the grounds that it had nothing to do with the bill, unlike the Karuja Stuart style of taking any damn amendment that had nothing to do with the bill and accepting it. You know, the crookedness that abolished provincial councils. In 2015, the amendments, I was told, the change of the electoral system, which everyone agrees is essential, which Sirisena promised he'd do before he dissolved Parliament. When I proposed that, I was told you can't propose it because it's a different subject. So, Mr. Sali, I did my best. But I accept that you can't do everything on your own.
Professor Vijay, just very quickly, when you say ask your candidate to study these things, are you referring to Attorney at Law Namal Rajapaksa or are you referring to Honorable Sajid?
I just told him, both your candidates, and I assume Namal is your preferred choice.
Nadim, if I may,
very quickly, correct me if I'm wrong, the National Unity Alliance was formed by the late Minister M.H.M. Ashraf, correct? And when he formed it, it was his intention, or at least the stated purpose, was that he felt that there was a need to bring communities together.
A lot of majority community people wanted him to do so. asking him to take the
What
name
is the-
Muslim Congress out.
Yeah. What is the policy line of the National Unity Alliance today?
National Unity Alliance is a party for all communities. It's not going to be based on one ethnic community. It is for everybody. That is why we call it the National Unity Alliance. We want everybody to be in it. That's our line.
And your candidate is not to be confused with the son of the former president and
He is
current
also an
MP,
attorney at law.
but also who is also an attorney at law. What was your intention in selecting him as a candidate?
See, I mean,
Was it because the reason that I asked is because we saw something similar happening in 2014-15 where we had sort of a mock-up of now President Maithripala Sirisena, who was running as a candidate, and it seemed that the intention was to fool the voter somehow. Mr. Sali, don't you feel that
that was a mudslinging campaign.
A mudslinging well,
but here there is nothing like that. Here it's an attorney at law, not a duplicate.
Who happens to have the same name. My question is this: don't you feel that these kinds of political games are really just insulting the intelligence of the voter?
No, if that is the case, if you see today, almost all the parliamentarians who have retired and gone, most of them, right, are candidates today. Because you can't come up with an independent candidate, right? Earlier, ordinary person could come and apply for nomination. But this time they have made it a point. One is either you come from a political party. Two is you come from,
You have to be a member of
if you are a member of parliament, bring a certificate from the Secretary General of Parliament.
No, but that's
That is
always the case. That's been in the Constitution from 1978. It's always there.
No, but any other person can come in.
No.
But now this time, they have only made it to political party
I think that
and
was
to
always-
parliamentarians.
that-
No, the
it's always-
Constitution has from the start said either recognize political party or a former member of parliament.
There's a third choice also, or another political party that is not the recognized party.
No, but even
there are three options.
but even that has to be a former member of parliament.
No.
We don't need to.
I think
There are three choices.
But it hasn't changed. It has always been the
it's
same from
always been the same.
1980.
Sorry, Deshan.
No worries. Mr. Sali, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to look in to the eyes of the general public when you answer this. Come the 16th of November, your first preference, is it going to go to Mr. Namal Rajapaksa or to Mr. Sajith Premadasa?
See, as my party candidate, I will think of Namal Rajapaksa. But on the greater interest of the country, we have to see who can defeat the Rajapaksas. That's the
greater
important
so if
thing.
the greater interest of the country is to defeat the Rajapakshas, and you are adamant that this is the greater interest of the country, why are you still going to vote for Namal Rajapaksa?
See, this is just nomination. We have another 40 days to go. Let's wait and see.
So is that a hint that your candidate might withdraw?
No, we'll wait and see. Anything could happen. No, you see, the president of this country has still made up his mind. No, where to go?
If
How do you expect the public to come?
President
The
Maithripala
president has still not
Sirisena,
announced whom he is going to support.
President Maithripala Sirisena appointed you as the governor of the Western Province. Following a questionable series of events, you resigned from that position. Now, even here, you said the president at the time took a massive risk. He committed, he did something great in the course of action he took. Now, given that you are so strongly against the Rajapaksas returning, if President Maithripala Sirisena were to support the Sri Lanka Podujana Peremuna's candidate, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, what would be your stance?
What I have told is his entire credibility will be already gone now.
And it's not gone out the door yet?
The color blue will go and his sarong also will be removed.
So his credibility is okay at the moment?
Gone, I said.
Okay.
Even going up to this level, it is gone. That's why I said S.B. Disanayaka, Dilan Pereira, they have taken him to this level. Now the blue has faded away. Now only the sarang has to come down.
Mr. Varnasuriya, talking about Mahesh Senanayaka, he is contesting presidential candidate of the National People's Party, which is in essence a group of civil society organizations. Am I correct?
A lot of civil society organizations, and also, Shahan, don't forget, there are individuals like us who may not come from any of those civil society organizations. Now, you all mentioned certain groups, the NPM, the Mahajana Sabhava, they have concomitant civil society groups that are part of them. Then there are also people like me who may not necessarily be backing him from a civil society organization. But the other groups, they are also civil society, other groups that I represent, people who have been working with us, both here and overseas. So it's a collection of forces, yes.
You said you're not necessarily a member of this.
I am not a member of the NPM,
Right.
but I am working very closely with the Mahajana Sabha.
The reason I ask is President Maithripala Sirisena himself came to power on the back of the National Movement for Social Justice.
That's right.
Which was led by
Sadharana Samaja Sandhavu Jatika Vyapara.
the late Madhuluave Subhitero was the one
Indeed.
who supported the common candidate and good governance and all of that. But we know what happened to that. The movement seemed to die a natural death with the passing of the late Tero. Good governance.
It had faded before because the Tero, admirable person, was totally ignored.
The
He was
Venerable
really
Tero
miserable.
himself.
I didn't know him before the election, but I used to see him often afterwards when, we were the two people who were miserable about what had happened. And he was a deeply depressed man.
The Venerable Tero himself had expressed his disappointment, deep disappointment.
And at
Yes,
the end
Jahan,
of,
the question.
And at the end of the term of President Sirisena, we are in this situation now where good governance and
Back
all of
again.
this is, yes. So how does the National People's Party, or how do you propose that Mahesh Senanayake and the National People's Party also prevent dying a natural death? How can he ensure not a repeat of what happened before?
The first argument I would think that the people ought to consider, Shahan, is a very valid question, excellent question, is that Mahesh is not a politician. That is actually one of my first attractions. Because I am sick and tired of trusting politicians. I'm sorry to say there are some good friends of mine who live on politics or who do politics as a livelihood, who earn their livelihood from politics. There are some good people, But a majority of them will never make a statement unless it's politically beneficial for them. A majority of them will shy away from a camera and make a statement if they feel that by making a statement they are going to lose more votes. I'm being very, but in Mahesh I saw a non-politician. That's my first attraction. Number two, it's very personal to me, Shayan. I am 48 years old now, and I've given myself another 2 years. By 50, I think I need to retire and put an end to all these nights of coming and enjoyable company and running around roads and police batons and barrels. I think we have done this from 1999 when I was a young law student, the last year. Coming back from England to a country filled with war, grenades being thrown at lawyers' houses, we fought. So this is certainly personally for me, my last straw. I am asking the people to decide whether you want the 71 years rule to continue or you want to start making a change. That's the next attraction for Mahesh, which I think the people will have because he's coming from civil society, not from a traditional political party, and offering an alternative, unlike Venerable Sobita's intentions, which were taken over by politics. That's the difference. That's the difference. And then I will certainly espouse for things in this election, which if my advice is taken, I hope it will be. We will ask the other parties how many of them are willing to disclose the assets and go the step further of making a promise that if someone shows that my assets are not what was disclosed, you can take action against me. But that's a loophole in our system. Nadeem knows, all of us, even when my name was on national list, we gave asset declaration. Even the little couple of bangles that my wife owned and my mother owned, my saris also had to be put in there. But then there is no system. Even the bribery commission is stuck now. Thereafter, if someone's assets are shown to be much more than what was disclosed, the elections commission says that's not my baby. I can't be taking action. Bribery commission says we can't act on the act that we have because someone must make a complaint. So we are suggesting alternatives where we are asking all these candidates, are you willing to show your assets? And then if someone were to challenge you, are you willing to face the challenge in court? That's not just one. Laws delays. The farmer, the poor farmer that depends on livelihood, we are an agro-based economy, we have to accept that. How are we going to take this country forward? And the people are talking of building internet universities. Where are you going to bring the money from? From the moon. As it is, we are supposed to promise 6% of our GDP towards education. We are only spending 4.6%. Now you say you're going to build universities. How are you going to bridge this gap? Do you have answers? We have answers, Shah. We have experts, professionals around Mahesh who will give answers.
Thank you, Mr. Varnasuri. I'd like to come to those answers in our next round. But before we go in for a break, Professor Vijay Singh, I'll give you a minute.
I wanted to just say that all the points to address are in my new constitution. For instance, I say very clearly, declarations of assets must be produced, put on a website, anyone standing for election, and any challengers can be made, and the elections commissioner will make a judgment. And if the judgment goes against the person who produced the assets declaration, they would be disqualified. That is had to be put in the constitution. With asking people to make promises doesn't work. Now we've seen all the promises. It has to be in the constitution. Laws delays. I suggested that the Chief Justice should absolutely make rules to stop all these delays. She does have the power to stop things that are frivolous, he rather now. And secondly, I think it's particularly important to reintroduce the arbitration and conciliation mechanisms in the villages as well, land disputes. All those take ages, but no one has suggested this. Why? Because when Felix Das Bandaranaike and Nihal Jayawardena tried in the 70s to make justice cheap and accessible, the lawyers immediately, organized by S.W. Jayawardena, attacked them mercilessly. That poor man was deprived of his civic rights and no one protested because he had a chicken farm. And the lawyers have since then had a field day. I'm sorry, you're one of them. But it is absolutely imperative to reintroduce the mechanisms, and that must be in the Constitution. So the judicial part of the people will be exercised by courts and also by arbitration and mediation mechanisms at rural level.
We presently have mechanisms, but they are not being used.
No, but the point is they're not in the Constitution and they become voluntary. And you have to do what Felix did, which is make it absolutely
Some of them
mandatory.
are mandatory. Some of them are mandatory.
Yeah, but they're not happening.
Now, for example, if you come to a
delayed is justice denied.
Exactly.
No, some of them are mandatory. Other. So, for example, if you come to a minor court and if you're...
As you say, these land cases and all that.
No, it's criminal what happens to people.
And also, can I just take 30 seconds and add to that, Nadeem, with your permission?
Yeah.
Azad said land cases. Now see how unfair it is for a land case person who have been coming to court for 15 years from Polonnaruwa, who comes for the final appeal to be heard in the Supreme Court. Lo and behold, we go and file a political case, right? And that takes priority. Why? Because if an election that is around the corner, and all those cases are then laid by now. I know, I am now appearing in the Supreme Court. Some cases are being refixed for next year, July. Next date is next year, July. So don't we as a country find solutions for this? We can't blame the judges because they are overworked. We know that sometimes when you see the briefs before them, you can't actually see the judge. They are stacked with briefs in front of them. Similar to lawyers, we sit from sometime morning, Nadeem, wasting valuable, precious working time, wait till 2, 3 in the afternoon, our case is not taken up. We have to find solutions for this.
Thank you very much.
Can I suggest to both of you that you get your candidates, your one candidate and your two candidates, to adopt my new constitution?
Thank you very much.
Get them to read it and take it over.
Krishma, first we must read it, no?
No, of course. I'm not expecting you to take it. I'm not like citizens. Read it, study it. It'll appear on my Facebook every day, on Twitter. The first chapter appeared today. Get them to adopt whatever is possible. And if I get these 3 candidates to support it, the other 31 will have to.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijay Singh. On that note, we'll go in for a short commercial break.
Kung Fu Master of the Zodiac, weekdays 2 p.m.
Here's Victor Viking, sailing the seas, it's Victor Viking. Full of ideas, it's Victor Viking. Say, won't you take us with you, please? Here's Victor Viking, with new adventures, Victor Viking. Battle adventures, Victor Viking. Bring every
Viking, weekdays 4:30 p.m.
Paris is relying on our new guardian angels, Ladybug and Cat Noir, to save us all.
You need some help.
Daddy!
Ladybug, weekdays 4 p.m.
Who are we featuring as our legend of music today?
Kool and the Gang.
Kool and the Gang have released 23 studio albums and 70 singles and have sold 7.5 million RIAA certified albums. Power of country music, honestly, it's pretty amazing.
Selling more than 6.3 million tickets, making it the biggest North American tour in history.
You know now I'm not a man who's ever been insecure about the world I've been living in.
Legends of Music Refresh, Padata Rathridayata. Daruwan වෙනුවෙන්ම සෑම මාසයක් පුරාම පැය 90ට. ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ටෙලිවිෂනයක දරුවන් වෙනුවෙන් ලොව අංකයක කාටූන්. නැවැන්ත ළමා චිත්‍රපට.
Yogi, grab my paw!
සතියේ දිනවල සවස 2 සිට 5 දක්වා. සති අන්තයේ උදෑසන 7 සිට දහවල් 12 දක්වා.
Eddie, you are not an athlete.
දැනුමයි රසයයි දෙන එකම තැන. TV1. ආලින්දේ ලැබෙන ළමා ලෝකය.
So beautiful.
Welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, we've been talking about democracy, governance, reforms, how we got here and where we go from here, especially in relation to the upcoming presidential elections. Mrs. Harley, I'd like to start this next round with you. When we left off, we were talking about the different policies, reforms that need to be made, to the justice system, to governance, to agriculture, Mr. Varnasuri was talking about. Very quickly, if you can tell me, as the National Unity Alliance, we briefly touched on what the late Minister Ashraf's intentions were when he founded this as an alternative to the SLMC, which he was the leader of. What will be your contribution to the policy dialogue? I'm not going to mention your candidate. I think Professor Vijay Singh mentioned you'd be supporting Mr. Premadasa and you have not denied it, so I'm going to take that as a given. But what will be your contribution or the contribution of the National Unity Alliance to the policies of Mr. Sajid Premadasa going into this in his manifesto?
See, if you take Mr. Premadasa as the president, the man who started, he was one of the candidates who was a very common candidate. And common means a person who knew the sufferings of the masses.
You're talking about the senior Mr.
Premadasa. He started the Jana Savya. That became Samurdhi for SP Disanayaka. Then there was a big loot on that money. Investigation is still going on. Investigation, CID, FCID, all that is going on. This Samurdhi has achieved somewhere. People are getting more benefits through Samurdhi, the former Jana Savya. Then his housing program, the 1 million housing program that he started. Those were the beginning. He was one president who could not complete his term. Right? If he had completed his term, the people would have seen a big change. Right? But there also you saw, President Jayawardena becoming the Prime Minister, then the executive presidency introduces, then he wanted to go the third term also. But due to the very strong leadership of Mr. Premadasa, it was just taken like what it was today. Like Sajid announcing, I am coming, I am coming, I am coming. That was told and it was mustered. The whole country was ready. People wanted the change inside the UNP. So that came in, and then this Mr. Sajid Premadasa has also been following what his father was doing, and he was also, now he was a person who should have just simply stayed in Colombo, taken Colombo Central, where the father was always winning. He could have been very happily being here. He said no, he wanted to go to Hambantota.
So Mr. Premadasa has already said that, you know, he's done this, he went to Hambantota for this reason, this is what he's going to do. He's promising reform on housing, he's promising access to affordable housing and free houses in some cases. So housing is one thing. What will the contribution of the National Unity Alliance be to this thing? Because you said, you mentioned yourself that it's a party for all communities.
We were a party that was in alliance. We were in 2015, we were in alliance. That alliance still continues, though we were not part of it after that. Right? But now that same party is only contesting this election. So our contribution towards that is there. Most of the things that we wanted done is there, but it was not done. What did happen in these 4.5 years is we were able to clear Gamini Senrath, that he never robbed the country. We cleared all the Rajapaksas, that they have also not done anything. We have cleared Yosita Rajapaksa from the Navy and given him a royal wedding, which homecoming is today. Nobody in this country is questioning how did Namal Rajapaksa get married with 8 functions. How did Yosita Rajapaksa get married today?
I'm trying to get out of this discussion. Now, in the past, let me try doing it another way. In the past, you were part of this unity through power devolution, through power sharing movement. When you were in the, or when this current camp was in the opposition, when President Mahinda Rajapaksa. What has happened to all of that is what I'm trying to get at. Maybe I shouldn't have been going around with that. Let me ask very directly. What has happened to your stance on things like the 13th Amendment?
All of us were striving to see that justice takes place, right? We were all wanting a lot of things to happen. We wanted all the fellows who have robbed the country behind bars. But what happened?
Excuse me, I think that's very unfair. My whole point was to stop any corruption and bribery. But I kept making the point that we should work in terms of restorative justice, not retributive.
No.
Because I think what really happened after 2015 was venom, anxiety to punish people. That is not what we want. No. But my point is we should have concentrated on restorative justice. That is the way to work towards stopping things.
Restorative justice is okay, but if they have plundered the country, some action should have been taken against that. If you all want central bank inquired, if the central bank bonds came to inquire, you have to go and inquire about the Greek bond also, right?
Mr. Sali, the Greek bond, Cope went into the Greek bonds. The things were brought before Cope. There was nothing that was wrong. There were misjudgments, but we also looked at the portfolio right through that year. And this effort to put Nivad Cabral, who managed our finances much better, in the rank of Alchura Mahendran stinks. You have to remember to distinguish between rank dishonesty and policies that you may or may not have agreed with. And the point I was making is that if you pursue retributive justice, it requires action in the courts that takes a long time. Nothing will get done with the best will in the world, and there was damn good will on the part of Ranil Wickremesinghe and his cohorts and Sirisena to punish people. They were just incompetent.
No,
but if you had gone for restorative
Professor, you're wrong, no? What? Professor, I don't know what you're talking, right? You tell me one person who was done with.
I'll tell you who has been put in.
One person.
Mr. Ranawaka, the permanent secretary, who was a brilliant civil servant, and all his colleagues know he was not dishonest, he was punished. Lalit Peeratunga was punished. What has happened is that by the appalling behavior of this government trying to get retribution, they stymied the civil service. All good civil servants found it difficult to work and to take decisions. So what has happened because of the venom of 2015?
I'd like to come to
if Lalit Peeratunga was right, you should have not signed that document, right? You don't go and distribute silk residue during election. What is
Have
that
you just
you're
seen
talking?
what has happened in Duminder Dissanayaka's case and Ranil's recommendations of the houses?
Right.
It's all very well to say that public servants need to be independent. I believe
Exactly,
they
see
should
what
be.
I'm saying?
But when I tried
make
in
the mistake.
2015, you know that the present constitution continues with the fact
More
that
than the
all
politician,
permanent
it is the
secretaries-
bureaucrats that
Can I
created
finish?
a problem
The
all this.
permanent secretaries should be made permanent. When I suggested this in March, I said, why are you still keeping permanent secretaries appointed only with the president? Both Sirisena and Vikram Singh dodged the question, insisting on their own power, and that is why we have that as Hemantri Fernando in the Secretary of Defense.
Again,
Outrageous.
Professor Vijay Singh, again, please refrain from name calling. And again, I'll remind you, we won't take any responsibility.
Full responsibility for Hemantri and Pujit, and both Ranil and Sirisena now know their problems.
That's the way. I'd like to hear from Mr. Varnasurya. We were trying to get into a dialogue on what the policy contribution would be, but it sort of segued elsewhere or went off on a tangent, let's say. We haven't heard what the policy contribution of the NUA exactly will be, but I'd like to know, as Counsel for General Mahesh Senanayake, what will be your contribution to his manifesto, to his policies? Where do you stand on issues like the devolution of power, the 13th?
Thank you, Nadeem. I think that's much more important for the people who are making a decision in a few days. We will, of course, formally be putting out a policy statement. So it would be unfair for me to go into details of what is still in the drawing boards. As I said in my answer to Shehan, the Mahajana Sabha, the NPM, others are all contributing to make one policy statements of things that they have been doing up to now, research they've been doing, careful research. If it's economy, if it's education, they all have to go into one policy document. But I will tell you this, Nadeem, there is a, now I know some people might laugh at this time, there was a scientific approach, there was a scientifically approached cabinet also some time back, where the Minister of Christian Affairs ended up being also the Minister of Tourism, and that was scientific. Where the Minister of Highways was also the Minister of High Education, that was scientific. Ours is not such a scientific approach, we are not that advanced, but we want to keep it simple, and we will approach certainly the agro-based industry on how do we give the farmer a better pricing and a better livelihood rather than the hand-to-mouth livelihood that they are undergoing through now, and we are looking at that. Education, we are certainly looking at a knowledge-based educational system where we've realized that our main source, if you like, that is marketable in terms of services is our intellectually advanced human capital that we have in the country. We are looking at a knowledge-based education system and a change where we can rather than the old-fashioned exports of tea rubber and coconut, and where the rubber is taken and they give us back the rubber ball after making it, we are looking at a re-evaluation of our economic policy, whether we need to depend so much on imports or whether there is productivity that we can bring in, at least for the domestic market, within our infrastructure. Then my area of law, I will definitely be advising Mahesh on strict legal reforms, and I am happy to tell your viewer that I have already started putting a document which I will present to him to deal with case management systems. We've practiced in other countries, Nadeem. When you go into court, if you are saying 9:40 your case is taken up, the judge has a previous night, the judge has a telephone call between two counsel and ask, it's called a case management teleconference. How much will you take, counsel? How long will you take? Have you sent me your skeletal argument? I mean, it's that detail. We have even got to give a skeletal argument of what we are going to say tomorrow, not like pulling things out of jackrabbit hats that we do in courts here, where the other side is taken completely by surprise. There are systems so that cases don't drag on. And then there are floater lists. So you fix 2 or 3 cases at certain times. In case something happens or someone dies, I mean, drastic emergency, there are floater lists which will feed into that case time. You know, so case management, handling legal delays, and very important, it is our contribution to advise a proper legal advice system, a legal advice mechanism where even the poor people who cannot afford, we presently have a legal aid system where, unfortunate to say, it's only the first few years of law students who are just passed out that take on legal aid cases because they don't have any other briefs. But other developed countries, when you are fitted with the legal aid system, you have an equally good counsel on the other side who's equally senior. If a president's counsel who will be pitted against the man the lawyer who represents the man who has money. A legal aid system where no one in this country should be unequally treated before the law. That's one of the reforms that we want to bring in. And with that, Nadeem, in all three areas of government, executive, legislative and judicial, we want to bring in systemic changes that we haven't done for 71 years. Why? As I said, we've brought governments to power but not built a republic. We want to build a republic of the people, and those are the policy alternatives that we are advising.
Mr. Sali, who do you think would be better at doing this? Do you think that the National Unity Alliance's candidate and the National Unity Alliance's platform will be able to present policies or reforms that are as progressive as some of the things that Mr. Varnasuriya is talking about?
This is what you will have to take. You will have to have professional people like Krishmal and them on board.
No, I'm asking you whether your party has it.
Anything good comes in has to be taken by a good government. All what we do is we only want to come into power.
Right.
Once we are in power, we forget everything.
Right.
This has been the traditional politics in this country.
Right.
That is why we have to, even after election, you forget the manifesto, because none of these governments have fulfilled their manifesto.
What is the manifesto of the National Unity Alliance? You all have put forward a candidate.
The National Unity Alliance is not coming up with a manifesto for this presidency. We will think about it for the parliamentary election. But what I'm trying to say
No, but you all have put forward a candidate.
Yeah, okay. But what we are trying to say is we will have to sit with intellectuals like Krishmal and them. Right now, Professor is saying he has a solution to the problem. He has for the constitution, he has made a lot of things. So take the good, leave the bad. He might be not giving all 100% good. There will be some flaws in his whatever he wants to do. So we will take the best. Krishmal also will take the best and then try to come the whole country. After elections, one person can be elected, no, not two. Once the one person is elected, you forget everything, get everybody down and ask them to put in something for the upliftment of the country. This is what you have to do.
Mr. Sali, before I hand it over to Shehan, just one last question. Why should the voter vote for Attorney at Law Namal Rajapaksa from your party at the presidential election above and beyond every other candidate that is on the list?
See, that is why I told you very clearly, there is 35 candidates here.
Correct.
Okay. Now, 35 candidates are not going to win this race.
Correct.
If I have the list of candidates who have performed last time also.
Right.
The highest number of votes each person has taken, the highest was 15,000.
Right.
The rest is all 10,000, 5,000 like that. So forget all that. What we want is the ultimate is one candidate who can win. So that candidate has to be looked upon and we have to support him. Right? One thing. The other thing is who can take the country forward.
Right.
Who will have a better manifesto.
Right.
And a manifesto that will be implemented.
Right.
Not just to give a manifesto that everybody will be happy with the manifesto and then ultimately you don't do anything. No. You have to give it to a person who can do it, who can deliver. So we have seen that.
Professor Vijay Singha was very, very elaborate in why he's contesting for the presidency. If that's the case, why have you put forward a candidate?
See, he himself is saying, I will not make it.
No, correct. But
right?
why have you put forward a candidate?
So Professor can't
Is it to
make
bring
it.
light to
so likewise, see, you have two
but Mr.
parties.
Sali, even though Professor Vijay Singh acknowledges the fact that he won't make it, because the reality is there are two major candidates.
Exactly.
He also has a purpose for running, and his purpose is to bring awareness to his proposed constitutional and reforms and his proposed parliamentary and democratic reforms, and to put that on the agenda of the other candidates, especially the two major candidates or the three mainstream candidates and the alternative of General Mahesh Senanayake as well. I think what Deshan is trying to ask is what is the National Unity Alliance?
See, Nadeem, only today we are given nominations.
Yeah.
We have more time for that, right? Okay. We have to come out with a manifesto and then, as Professor said, take everything, right? Okay. Now he is telling us to take it to the other two candidates. So Krishmal also can take, I also can take. We will all collect everything and give it to them.
Thank you very much. Shehan,
can I just make a quick point? I just want to congratulate and thank Krishmal, those ideas you put forward. And we should congratulate Mahesh on picking you. I think there's a shady background to some of his stuff, but your ideas on law and reform are precisely those that your Sajita or your Nama should pick up immediately.
Thank you. Quick question, Shehan.
Yes. Time is difficult, I understand, but very quickly, the 21st April attacks has changed how the voter thinks these days. There's a lot of tension and social media and messages being shared, and people get very concerned. And obviously that's an important aspect of this particular election. Professor Vijay Singh, what do you propose in terms of policy with dealing with this area, and is simply beefing up security enough?
Well, I think there are two or three things. One is security certainly need to be tightened, and this government grossly neglected security and indeed ignored the warnings. But secondly, it's again part of the manifesto. I was looking through the suggestions of the parliamentary committee, and they still go on with the same old way of directing principles, say we must all love one another. Yes, we're all very well to say that, but how do you do it? So I've actually suggested very concrete measures in our education system that will bring people together. And you have to change the education system completely. When I chaired the Academic Affairs Board of the NIE, we did wonderful, and I say wonderful because India actually said they wanted to print the books for it. But of course, then governments changed, I was got rid of, and we went back to the same old thing. You know, we used to have this, how do we celebrate pluralism of this country? The NIE produced a textbook in which you had every one of the different racers in their costumes. There was a burger child wearing a tie and coat, and they were sort of emphasizing we're different. Well, the whole point of a country like ours is we should show, while respecting identity, that we're all really very similar. You know, it was all about the Muslims eat biryani and the Sinhalese eat poluskari and all. But rubbish, we all eat biryani and we all eat poluskari. So the education system has to really recognize the importance of unity. And there's a very strong section in there in my directive principles, and again I hope you all pick these up, about how our education system should change. I also think it's very important, while I think your knowledge economy is correct, one of our problems in Sri Lanka is we don't give skills to kids, we don't give language to kids. You know, the elite keep English, the rural communities are still locked in monolingualism, we can't talk to each other. You know, when people come to university, one knows Sinhala, one knows Tamil, they don't know a common language. So all those have to change, and they have to be done promptly.
Professor, this is a very controversial question that I posed some weeks ago, actually, on the question. In his memoirs, Lee Kuan Yew said that one of the biggest mistakes that Ceylon made was scrapping English as an official language. Do you agree with that position? Do you feel that the step that was taken by the Bandaranaike government to bring about the Sinhala only, Sinhala as the official language of the state, do you feel that that decision was incorrect? Do you agree with the observation that was made by, or the opinion of Lee Kuan Yew?
Well, you have to put it in a more nuanced way. What I have said in my new proposal is that there should be 3 official languages: Sinhala, Tamil, and English. Now, what happened? You have to remember there were 2 steps. The first was Jawatana in 1943, insisting that Sinhala be the medium of instruction for all students, which DS and Co got him to change to Sinhala and Tamil. And all the people may blame Bandaranaike. The medium of instruction was actually a UNP input in 43 and then 51 Eddie Nugavala. But Bandaranaike's thing of Sinhala only was clearly a mistake. But as you know, it was the UNP that had a session in Kalania and went to the country for a mandate to implement Sinhala only, repudiating John Kotalawala's commitment in Jaffna for parity of status. And if you look at the 87 amendment, even that treats Tamil badly. Sinhala is the official language, Tamil shall also be an official language. So it must be all 3 being official, and you must have a policy where every single child in this country is fluent. No, I think that's too much to ask, but is fluent in 2 of them. So then we can talk to each other. And it's easy to do. I've done it. As you know, I produced 200 English teachers in 1 year before that was stopped.
General Sena, sorry, not General Sena, Mr. Varnasuriya. Mr. Varnasuriya, I mean, for General Senanayake to be a serious candidate, he will have to be able to muster support from minority communities, from the Tamil-speaking people, not just in the north and east, but also in Colombo, in the hill country, and even in the south and the northwest. Is he able to do this? What will be the stance, or in your brief interactions with him, what have you gleaned regarding his positions on issues like devolution of power and reconciliation and moving forward together?
In his initial address at the Sukatadasa, when we presented him as our alternative candidate, he said one thing emphatically, Nadeem, and that is that his advice from all of us is that there has to be a consistency of one country, one law. Right? Now, within that concept of one country, one law, we realize that there are certain concerns that the majority may not face, which may be faced by the minorities, which we have to realistically address. And I don't say addressing this by talking of 13 plus or 13 minus. Because frankly, in my personal opinion, which I will certainly convey to Mahesh, I don't think that 13th Amendment and going beyond 13th Amendment and devolution is the only answer to the grievance of the minorities. Because it is my understanding that the actual minorities, Nadeem, the minorities that struggle to live and make three square meals a day, just like the man in the south, they don't want amendments. They want a livelihood. They want answers to their questions. They want the areas of the country that were ravaged by a war of 30 years developed. It is only the politicians who depend on these minorities to come into parliament, sometimes with disgraceful numbers like 3 and 4 votes from one. You remember, no? So one man got 3 votes and he ended up a member of parliament. And it is these politicians who thrive on trying to propose amendments saying devolution, 13 plus, 13 minus, military force, police power. These have become political slogans for those who want to remain in political power at the cost of these people. We are certainly across the board, when we sit down with our policy, as I said, we are a movement gathering momentum daily. You must see, Nadeem, I'm honest telling you, some comments that I'm not just getting from our friends, people that I don't know, and these are people only who have 3-4 days seen that I've become part of this camp, of actual very realistic and progressive thoughts on how to address problems. And we are going to look at it. Sorry, Shahan. Yes.
Sorry, just in relation to Shahan's question regarding
he didn't ask me that.
Regarding the regarding the aftermath.
Okay.
Regarding the aftermath of the East attacks. Now, I'm aware that you have filed representing public interest litigation at the Supreme Court.
And we got leave.
And you've got leave to proceed.
Not against only the Defence Secretary and the IGP, but against the President, Prime Minister, Defence Minister and all of that.
And all of them seeking accountability. I'm not going to ask about the specifics of the case, but because we're running short of time and it'd be unfair to get into that specific. But when we talk about democracy and governance in Sri Lanka, I mean, something that we're seeing now in the aftermath of the East attack is an increased call for security. And we always have this dichotomy between security and liberty. It's always a security versus liberty, or liberty versus security. In fact, in 2015, you could argue that it was liberty versus security, and maybe liberty won out. And now it's security versus liberty. Is it impossible? I mean, you're supporting a candidate who has a military background, a former army commander, but there's also talk of liberty from within that camp. Is it impossible for security and liberty to coexist?
Certainly not. Certainly not. And I think Mahesh made it very clear in his, once again, his inaugural address, where he said that he gives paramount importance to security. But security, he said, is not in the sense of running around with military apparatus and scaring people with guns and gunmongering and making a business out of military. But security is where every Sri Lankan citizen, notwithstanding what their nationality or race are, feels secure and safe to continue their livelihood. And that does not necessarily mean only the security from some man who's going to come and throw a bomb. That certainly needs to be provided for. But there's also security of a livelihood that we need to assure, and our vision goes beyond that. But can I just finish by referring to the case which Nadeem, it's historical in the sense that the Lordship of the Supreme Court, 7 judges, including His Lordship Chief Justice, granted leave not only on Article 12.1, but also Article 14.1e, religious freedom, is also a matter that will be looked at into the Easter Sunday case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varnasuriya. Very quickly, Mrs. Hali, before we go into a break and come for the final round, I'm sorry, Shahan, I've used up, but I hope it did answer
he
that
answered
my
that.
referral kind of answered some of
I was looking
what
at
your
you and
question
came
was.
from here.
Mr. Sali, as I said before, the National Unity, as the leader of the National Unity Alliance, in the past, you've spoken of this concept of unity through power sharing. What are you hoping that let's say your main candidate, Mr. Sajid Premadasa, what are you hoping that he will accomplish as far as your goals or your agenda or your community is concerned in terms of power sharing and reconciliation?
See, I mean, first to talk about what Doctor said, Professor said, is about this 21st Easter Sunday attack, right? Now, this attack would have not happened. I think out of the press conference that I did on March 15, 2017 to arrest Zahran, only your Shakti channel, not even the Sirasa channel, only Shakti channel took that for news. If they had taken it seriously, and the letter that we have given to Defence Secretary at that time, not only one secretary, whoever was the Defence Secretary, we have been right throughout informing them of these guys who are involved in this. Finally, still it took place, nobody took. When my PSD guy gets a note, that is before the attack, I just checked the names. So this name was there. I called the IG and asked, this is the same guy that we have complained to you. Why action has not been taken? Why haven't you arrested this man? So see, what a serious thing was taken so lightly, right? So everybody was the Secretary of Defence from Gotabaya Rajapaksa today are responsible. Now, of course, Gotabaya Rajapaksa's time, they have now accepted. They have funded them. They have funded the LTT. They say they have accepted. Kelly Rambukela came on a TV debate show that is going viral on Facebook and all that. He is accepting that they funded these people.
To be fair, Mr. Sali, since they're not here to defend themselves,
No, I'm taking it. I'm talking to you with responsibility.
I will say that I believe they were referring to the fact that they had provided payments to certain individuals in the interest of gathering intelligence. So it's not funding. So
my point is they have funded. That's all, right? For what they have this thing, I don't know. They even made Karuna Amman the vice president of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. So we will not talk about that.
Specifically on my question.
Coming to what
do you expect Minister Sajid Premadasa to do if he becomes president?
Before I
what
come
do you
to
expect
that,
him to do?
Like Professor said, the education system has to be changed, right? All religious schools should be abolished, right? You must have all 4 communities sitting. Now, my school, DS Senanaga, is one good example. You have the temple, you have the Kovil, you have the mosque, and you have the church there, right? All 4 communities are studying there. We all knew what the difficulty of the Sinhala boy, what the difficulty of the Tamil person, what the families were. We were all together. Everybody knew each other. But here, when you have the religious school, the Muslim students see the Sinhala student in a different way. The Sinhalese students see the Muslim and the Tamil students in a different way. These attitudes are becoming a big problem. So you have to bring all of them together. That is why we want to start at the 10 model schools in Colombo. When I was governor, I initiated that. We have already done the drawings. Everything is done. But we have to only initiate it. I hope somebody will start it, or with the change of government, we hope. Will you push, since you will be pledging your support to Mr. Sajid Premadasa, will you push him to do this? Definitely, not only model school, as Professor said, we have to get everybody together for a united Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, Mr. Sali. On that note, we go in for our final break. We'll be wrapping up things when we return.
Mini Ninja, weekdays 3:30 p.m. Melodies Melodies. සතියේ සෑම දිනකම උදෑසන 5ට.
සතුට නිදහස ජීවිතය හොයාගෙන අපිට විවේකයක් නිවාඩුපාඩුවක් ලැබුණාම අපි බොහෝ තැන්වල යන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. අපේ රටේම තැනක වෙන්න පුළුවන්, නැත්නම් ඉන්දියන් සාගරයේ තැනක වෙන්න පුළුවන්, ලෝකයේ ඕනෑම තැනක වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි කැමති ඇවිදින්න, සංචාරය කරන්න, ලස්සන බලන්න, විවේක ගන්න අපි හරිම කැමතියි. හැබැයි දින ගණනක්, සති ගණනක්, මාස ගණනක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් අවසානයේ අපේ සැබෑ ජීවිතය, සැබෑ සතුට, සැබෑ නිදහස හොයාගෙන අපිට මතක් වෙන්නේ ඔබේත් මගේත් ආදරණීය නිවස. එසේනම් මේ ලෝකේ ලස්සනම තැන බවට පත්විය යුත්තේ අපේ සුන්දර නිවස. එන්න පහන් නිවසට මේ ජීවිතයේ සොඳුරුම තැන් හමුවන තැන.
Welcome back. It's the final round of Face the Nation. We're nearing the end of today's program. We've been talking about democracy, governance, the way forward for Sri Lanka, the reforms that are needed, what needs to be on the agenda of the different candidates, of the 35 candidates who are running for, or at least the serious candidates who are running for the presidential election, which will be held on the 16th of November. Professor Vijay Singh, in summation of all of the different subject areas that we've touched on today, what would you like to say in conclusion? I'm not going to pose a specific question. How would you sum up the dialogue?
Well, just to take up some of the ideas that you all mentioned, how do we solve, within inverted commas, the so-called national question? And I think the key, which to pick up something Krishmal said, is empowerment of the people. Now, if you actually look at the parliamentary committees on the new constitution, the one on devolution is the same old mixture where politicians want more power to themselves. But the one on public administration says something that we actually proposed, or rather I did, GL tried to dodge it, to the TNA, and they accepted it, which is entrenching in the constitution the third layer of government, which is local government. It should be in the constitution to prevent other people taking it, and it should have, which I tried to do with Mr. Ranawaka, consultative mechanisms. The present act doesn't have mandatory consultation. The proposal put in was to say appoint committees appointed by the chairman of the local authority. So what I think we should do is get people from the village communities, the rural development societies, the women's RDS, and set up at local level not only the 7 functions they have already, but things like preschools. This is what Sajid was talking about, but I don't think he studied it well enough. He should take up those ideas. Preschools, primary health care, libraries and cultural centers, all those should be entrusted to local government with adequate funding, and the committees should be bipartisan, which is why I proposed the system of STV. I don't know whether you know the electoral system, which allows the leadership of, say, 2 or 3 committees to represent 2 or 3 interests. So that, I think, is a way of empowering local government, what really matters to people. Because what do people in the villages really want? They want good communications, transport, they want good schools, they want good health facilities.
Livelihood.
They want their livelihoods, and they want protection. Where the kids are looked after, where health facilities are available. Those should be done through local government, empowered for the purpose. And I've also suggested that the provincial council, we should stop this rubbish about electing provincial councils at vast expense. And the provincial councils should be formed by electoral colleges of the local authorities. It would be very simple. You get rid of this massive expense and these chief ministers who think they're God until they get a chance to come into parliament. That should be got rid of. It should be a collegiate system at those 2 levels. That's all in the new constitution. Please tell your candidate and your 2 candidates.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijay Singh. Next, I'd like to move to Mr. Azad Sali, leader of the National Unity Alliance. Mr. Sali, summing up today's discussion that we've had on the program, what would you like to say to the people of Sri Lanka?
Telling the people to be very wise when they are selecting their candidate, number 1. Number 2, This is like the Modi style of election that is going on in Sri Lanka now. Right? Modi style of election is insulting the minorities and increasing the majority vote. That was Modi style of election in India. The same thing, the same campaign team is here for Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. That is why you see so much of effect, so much of insult to the minority community in this country. So we have to take that very, very seriously. Going against the minority communities is not a thing that is very good, because it's not going to be very healthy for a democratic country like Sri Lanka. So we have to take extra care, and precaution must be taken, because there are some Muslims who are there with them. We are not saying not to this thing, but precaution must be taken, because we are a country with a very strong minorities also. We have 30% minorities living here, right? We have to ensure that all communities live in peace, right? We have to identify the people who make mistakes, not only the minorities, but within the majority community. Now you see a set of monks who are with the port tour. Now see, lately, yesterday only, the man who created all the problems are getting on Gotabaya's platform yesterday. So that very clearly gives the indication that all these problems have been orchestrated by the port tour. And now they are taking in those people there. So these monks also, all religious leaders will have to be very, very careful. And the Mahanayakas have a role to play in this country. They have to advise the religious leaders, whether it is Sinhala, Muslim, Christian or Hindus, everybody, that what they should be doing, and not to take the country like this, you know, and not to create hatred among communities. They have to live, everybody has to live peacefully. There shouldn't be any situation and any type of a thing today. Even if there is an argument between a three-wheel driver today, it is taken in as a big community issue. And you saw, we have seen this happening in Avisavela, we have seen this happening in Hettipola. We saw the chairmen of the port tour after Cardinal had made the statement to say, I know the people behind this, I know the country that is behind, I will tell at the right time, you all be silent. 3 weeks this country was very silent and peaceful. How did this come up all of a sudden in 3 weeks? How did they go and kill people? Who was behind this? Everything is there, but where is investigation? Where was justice? More than 2,800 Muslims were arrested. What happened? What happened to the people who went and attacked mosque and houses at Hettipola, Minuwangoda, all these places? Who were these people? All port tour guys were arrested.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sali. Again,
they were all released in 4 days. Yeah. But the others were all kept for more than 5 months. So these type of injustices have been happening, and who is behind this is very well known. The whole country knows now. Yeah. We have to be very careful.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ali. Again, I have to again repeat it, not for your benefit, but for the benefit of our viewers, that we will not take responsibility for any allegations that are made by guests.
The President of the country has said it, not me. The President of the country made a statement to all the civil society people. That is the port tour guys who are doing everything. All these minority attacks are by the port tour. The President has said, not me.
He may have said it, but we cannot be held responsible.
I'll give you the recording of the President. Don't worry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sali. And finally, Mr. Varnasuriya, to sum up tonight's dialogue or discussion, let's say, where do we go from here? What is your message to the people of Sri Lanka? I'm ending with you because you are here representing an alternative option. What do you have to say?
Nadeem, since the restriction of your time to me, I've made a few notes so that I will go very quickly. So that because I thank your station for giving us the opportunity to get the message across. We don't have the millions to spend on party funding. In fact, that's a good question people should also ask. When all these people go with their $1 million campaigns, where does party funding come from? We don't have such money. So these little opportunities that we get are the only way that we can get the message across. So thank you. The good professor, who's a senior to us in a dear school that we studied, also was also later on a professor of English at the university that he and I are alumni of. So maybe he'll understand this. Brecht once said that it's time to elect a new people. I think this election, you the people, need to decide for yourselves. Do we elect ourselves this time, or do we once again elect someone whose face we like or the color that my grandfather belonged to, and then go running behind them from the birth of the child of giving the name to the death where you want the politician to come and give a speech after marrying you, finding you a job and all of that, and pay lip service. You make the decision. Is 71 years enough? Do we make a change or do we continue? It's entirely up to you, you the people. We also need to figure out whether we made a republic or whether we have just continued with party-colored governments. Is the public service strong? Do we have government servants now who serve governments of the day, or do we have public servants that serve you? Do you not want to get it back there, where the state servant who swears an oath on the constitution serves you and the republic, and not a government servant that comes and goes? You make the decision. Then do we look at a new system, or do we ask our children, dear son, daughter, go and study in some university with the millions that we have saved, and then stay there, don't come back, and we will, Amma and Tata will live here and die off here, come for a funeral. Are you going to tell that to your children? You make the decision. Finally, what I ask you to decide is this election, the presidential election, as I said continuously, is not a be-all and end-all. Let this be a start. You have been, particularly those of you who have been talking to us and saying, make a change, make a change. I encourage you who sit on the armchair, watch us in the night, and say, well, Krishmal and several of them are fighting the battle for us now, so we can have a cup of tea and watch them in the night. Make a start to make the change at this election. Let us build a republic together, at least now after 71 years. Let the people's voice be heard at this election, and give a message to all these so-called political parties that have been running this country to the dogs for the last 71 years. Say, we have now asserted our sovereign power. Article 3 of the Constitution says sovereignty is in the people, it is inalienable, it cannot be taken away. Have you allowed it to be taken away? Has your servant become your master? You are the master whose power the servant comes to serve you. But when the servant whisked past you in a Prado intercooler with entourage, are you back in the gutter where you don't belong? Make the decision. If you want to join with us, this is the time. Reach out to us and let's make a people's change at this election. Let that be a start. Perhaps our generation is gone, our time is gone, at least so that we can make a start so that our children will be able to live in a better day that you and I didn't.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krishmal Varnasuriya, attorney at law, also counsel for General Mahesh Selanayake, and also an activist who has been campaigning for governance and democratic reforms for a long while now. Mr. Krishmal Varnasuriya wants you to make the start to make a change. And we're also joined this evening by Professor Rajiv Vijayasinghe, who has re-entered the fray of active politics by becoming a candidate for the 2019 presidential election. Professor Vijayasinghe is proposing much-needed reforms to our governance systems, to our parliamentary system, to education system as well. As an educator himself, he's proposing these reforms, and he's calling on his fellow candidates to take on his reforms. Professor Vijayasinghe's main intention in running for the election is to raise awareness on the issues and to bring those policy issues onto the agendas of the other candidates. And we're also joined this evening by Mr. Azad Sali, leader of the National Unity Alliance. Mr. Sali says there must be justice and we need to hold Mr. Sali was saying we need to hold the foes of democracy at bay. If I put it that way, is that correct, Mr. Sali? That's a summation.
Don't leave that again.
That's a summation. That's a summation. That's pretty much a summation of what Mr. Sali had to say to the people tonight on Face the Nation. Thank you very much also to Deshan and Shehan. And again, as I did last week, I apologize for eating into your time, because I can't ask our guests to apologize for taking up your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again to Deshan and Shan. I hope you managed to have a lot of your questions answered as well. So I opened this evening's discussion with a quote that has been attributed to Churchill, but I'm not sure if he actually said it. This I'm sure that he actually did say. If I had to sum up the immediate future of democratic politics in a single word, I should say insurance. That is the future. Insurance against dangers from abroad, insurance against dangers scarcely less grave and much more near and constant. which threaten us here at home in our own island. Of course, the island that he's referring to is Great Britain, but I think it's a statement that's quite appropriate for our own little island, Sri Lanka, at this juncture in time. Good night and good luck.